Kelly Kinkaid.
Kelly Kinkaid.
It's First Aid with Kelly Kinkaid on Sway in the Morning.
All right, man. Welcome back, Kelly Kinkaid.
Good morning.
Good morning. Today is an interesting topic. Kelly, I know you don't have kids, but you take care of a lot of kids, and I actually have a child. And this our next guest has written an extremely interesting book that I think all parents should pick up on. I'm going to let you do the honors, Kelly. Who we have with us today?
We have Dr. Jarret Patton here with us today. Sway, I'm here for all those parents who are so happy that all these kids have gone to school, but it's the weekends that I'm here to help them for, because I don't like badass kids. And, you talked about a situation you saw a mother reprimanding a daughter. It's a lot of badass kids out here, and I'm just wanting to help the world.
And he wrote
Good morning, Dr. Patton.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. And you're right, there are a whole lot of badass kids, and I'm just trying to do my part to help reduce the epidemic.
Okay, you wrote a book called "Whose Badass Kids Are Those?" ? A parent's guide to behavior for children of all ages. And you, as a doctor, you're a certified pediatrician. You got 20 years of experience, and you spent your time in a clinical career taking care of children in urban clinics. Is that what made you write this book?
Yes.
Okay.
Part of it is personal experience, but part of it is just years and years and years of finding out the struggles that parents go through. And one of the things that we always would talk about in the clinic visits are that kids are bad sometimes, and they may show out, they may act up, but you have to figure out ways to get them under control.
In addition to being a pediatrician, you're also a father, so you have kids, so you have a lot, you have balance. So you speak from the being board certified as far as you went to school for it, and you have like that day on the job training with your kids.
Absolutely. I have 3 living children, and they have helped mold my experience as a pediatrician to become something much greater than it was before I had kids.
I want to ask you, can you define bad? What's badass kids? What make a kid a badass kid? What kind of behavior are we seeing from those who are deemed badass?
Well, of course, Way, you think about it, that there's really no such thing as a good or badass kid. But we talked about badass kids because, well, we know who those people are. You're walking through the mall or the grocery store. You might be in church, and you see some kid acting up, and you just know in your head, that's a badass kid.
Okay, and that's what a badass kid is, by your definition, right? What causes this, though? Like, is it really a kid that's just not disciplined, that wasn't taught well? Maybe it's a kid with PTSD. Maybe it's a kid who hasn't eaten properly. Maybe it's a kid who's having sleep deprivation. I mean, what causes this behavior, you think?
And you're right. It can be from a lot of different reasons. And some of them can be from long-standing trauma in both the kid or in the family. In fact, what we know about trauma and adverse childhood experiences, that they have multi-generational effects. So it really could be a result of even the parents' trauma that is affecting the child now, and that they act out in a certain behavior.
Wow, man, this is interesting. Dr. Jarret R. Patton is here. And I'm curious, too, like this is something we talk about. A lot of us are doing better now than perhaps the generation before us. We've acquired a few things, and because of that, we want to make it easier for our kids. And the result of that, in many cases, instead of appreciation and humility, is a sense of entitlement can come along with that as well. Are we seeing a lot of that now in this generation?
We are seeing a lot of entitlement, and I address that some in the book, because a lot of times parents think the way that they can compensate for some of the deficiencies that they may have had growing up is by giving their kids extra. And sometimes they just give too much, and they give more and more and more and more. And the child doesn't really learn the value of anything. They don't learn the value of money. They don't learn the value of relationships. And then they feel entitled so that they can do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it.
Kelly, would you say you were a badass kid growing up?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I was the apple of my parents' eyes.
Oh, wow.
That's why I don't like bad children now, because I feel like order is always needed at all times. And in your doctor's office, being a pediatrician, what stage of the child do you see the parent as far as reaching out to you? Because you're a therapist as well.
Yes, and a lot of times they will come at every age, and some of the themes that go along with kids acting out can be the same in those terrible 2 and 3-year-olds that are throwing tantrums, and it can be the same in a teenager that's throwing a tantrum over a cell phone or some other reason. And so some of the strategies that you can learn will help you deal with the behavior at every stage. So, of course, I see kids at a much younger age more frequently because they need to come in and have shots and they need to do a number of things. But parents always need help with behavior because it is a lifelong, and not only we're talking about through 18, we're talking lifelong, all the way up through adulthood.
Don't stop, man. I got a 21-year-old, and it never stops. Parenting doesn't stop. As long as y'all both breathing, it ain't, even when you're not breathing, you're still parenting. Because everything you did on this planet will stick with your kid until their final days. We got Dr. Patton is here. What's your social if people want to reach you?
You can find me at Dr. Jarret. Spell out the word doctor, DOCTOR, JA, 2 R's, E, 1 T.
I want you to think about this when we come back, though. Have you ever told a parent, beat them?
888-742-3345. If you have any questions, maybe you having issues with your kid, maybe the doctor can help you. Call us. Sway in the morning.
More First Aid with Kelly Kinkaid on Shade 45.
Got a really special guest with us, Kelly Kinkaid. Do the honors, please.
Yes, we have Dr. Jarret Patton here today, the author of Whose Badass Kids Are Those? He's a board-certified pediatrician. And, I was asking you a question of when you have your patients with their parents in your office, have you ever told them to beat them? Like, what's your stance on
Say beat
spanking?
them? You mean whip them, spanking?
Beat. Sometimes, beat. Sometimes that's whooping and tap, but sometimes that's all they understand, though.
Yeah, and this is something that comes up time and time again, and the flat out answer to that is no, because before we used to think that spanking and using some sort of physical punishment was okay and it would help develop the child, but after years and years and years of research, we're realizing that showing physical harm to a child is not acceptable, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it actually teaches the child that the ones that love you can physically hurt you, and that is one surefire way of continuing a cycle of violence and perpetuating that throughout the generations. Two, children will grow up and have trust issues. They say that on one hand, my mom or dad loves me, but on the other hand, they're smacking me around. And that doesn't sit very well with kids. And so the research has demonstrated time and time again now that physical punishment is just not acceptable.
Three. That you're emulating. I'm gonna add a 3 on here. It's a slave master slave dynamic there, where the slave masters used to beat the slaves for what they deemed bad behavior, even though they was just trying to survive, and it perpetuates that whole mentality. And with my daughter, I didn't want to whip her because I didn't want her to think it's okay for a man to put his hands on her.
That's right.
Under any circumstance. So if you can't communicate with your child in a way that could bring understanding, then maybe you got to go get help.
I was going to say it really stems with the parent and breaking a cycle, because both of you all, if you all wanted to leave the United States, Scotland would be a great country for you, because Scotland just became the first country in the UK to ban smacking of children. So if you hit your child, you could go to jail for real. This is bigger than calling the Child Protective Services now. And I think that is good, because we do, I feel like when you say that, when you have a mother or a father who's worked 40 hours a week and you have this terrible 2 or 3 or even a teenager and you don't have any tools, what do you do? Like, what tools would you give a parent if they feel like they were beat, their mothers were beat, or their parents were beat? This is what I've learned. How do you unbreak that cycle?
And that's one of the issues. There is no ultimate guide to parenting. I mean, I wrote a book on it, but I'm the first one to admit there's no ultimate guide. You can't read about it. You can't get a certification in it. You can't take a test for it. And a lot of times people parent based on how they were parented as a child. and you just don't know any better. And so you have to invest in yourself. You have to do a little bit of research, and you can find ways to communicate with your child so that your child has an understanding and they know when you mean business. And then there's some times when you can have fun playing around with the kid as well.
And a lot of times, especially in our country and definitely in our community, it's a lot of kids having kids. And we're expecting them to have this ultimate parental wisdom that they haven't even found adult wisdom yet. And that behavior you're seeing on their kids is a direct result of how they're being parented. What do you do in those cases, man, when you got the 15-year-old who's trying to figure it out but don't got it, still dependent on somebody else for their food, and then they got to feed their kid? They didn't go to school necessarily, or school wasn't a priority to them, but now you're expected to put your kid and make school a priority for them. How do we, as a community, help those type of parents who probably have those type of shortcomings and don't have the resources to raise a kid properly?
And as we know that the brain continues to develop through those teenage years and isn't really finished developing until the early 20s, you're absolutely right. That teenage parent is struggling to grow up and come into their own. At the same time, they are responsible for raising a child. In a lot of cases, raising a child helps bring their adulthood up, and they end up being farther ahead of their peers. But sometimes, as we talked before, there's so much trauma within that teenager and maybe that teenager's parent that will affect the child automatically, because that child will struggle to learn and thrive. And that's when the community has to step in. And it's okay to say, hey, look, do you need some help? Do you need a safe place to live? Maybe it's food is an issue, but we need to be able to help each other to get through these problems.
Dr. Jarret, one more time, if you're dealing with some issues with your kid and this man could possibly help, give you some suggestions on how you can make that environment better, you could find him directly on social at
Dr. Jarret, DoctorJarret.
Hit him for free, because he been on this show. He gonna give you advice for free, citizens.
And you have such a patient voice. I think a lot of people need patience.
Patience is one of the biggest things that you can have as a parent. That is going to be one of your skill sets that you will use. And if you can just stop, take a deep breath, because I know you had a rough day at work. I know you had a rough day just getting back and forth, trying to do the things that you want to do for your child. Take a deep breath. Count to 10.
I stopped taking things personal with my child when she would say certain things or do certain. I had to. I had to not take it personal. It's like, what did you just say to me? Like, my worst enemy couldn't get away with that, but you just cannot take it personal. You just have to take that shit, Doc.
Yes.
All right, man. I'm sorry, man.
So we get in that therapy session, Sway. We can do it. Let's go. Yeah. All right.
Blake from my child's amazing. I'm just saying, but over the years, every parent deals with something. Blake from Quincy, Illinois. Blake, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Hey, I have a question, doctor. So I have 4 children. My first child, she was born when I was 16, and my wife and I, we really have this issue of the behavior you were talking about. And I think it's more so the entitlement thing, all these electronics and all of this. But when I'm at home with our children, just me and our children, they listen perfectly fine. But as soon as my wife comes home, I'm self-employed. I'm a financial advisor and a life insurance agent. And when she comes home from work, all of a sudden, it seems like more so our son just completely loses control. He's back talking. He's not listening. We try timeout, in the corner. He's 8 years old. I call it a military timeout. I put a quarter on the wall. I have them hold the quarter with their nose. They have 30 seconds up against the wall with their hands to their side as punishment. But it's just nothing. It has seemed to work.
And it can be very tough. And so there are 2 things that I would start with. The first thing is that you and your wife have to be on the same page about what is a violation in the family rules and what is not. Because what you're going to have to do is whenever the child breaks the rules, whether that's talking back or not listening or any of those things, there must be a swift and immediate penalty for that. And so if it is going to be timeout, it can be timeout. And in fact, as long as you are enforcing that every single time, it can be of some benefit to you and your child. But if there are times where they may talk back to you and you just kind of let them go, they're going to start rolling the dice, and they're going to think, hey, maybe, just maybe, they won't say anything this time when I talk back.
You got to stay consistent.
Very consistent.
Blake, I hope that helps you. And also make sure you buy the book, Whose Badass Kids Are Those? A Parent's Guide to Behavior for Children of All Ages. Look for that online. It's in all platforms, correct?
That's correct.
And it's an easy read, man. But as soon as you open the book, you're going to go, oh, yeah. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Then you can have another one and have 5
Okay.
kids.
Exactly. Blake, you're a citizen.
Explain about it.
Summer from Tennessee. Good morning, Summer.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Doing well. Are you a parent?
Yes, I am a parent of 3.
Okay.
My oldest is 23. My son, he's 18, and I have a 15-year-old. And I was a young mom, pregnant at 15, 16. I had her. And I absolutely disagree with the parenting that you guys are teaching. Because
What part? Like
the part that you're not supposed to, whoop your kids, or you shouldn't have to hit them. I don't say beat your child, beat them up and sock them in the face and slap them and make them black and blue and nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have some type of scare tactic. If you have a wooden spoon, that needs to know, okay, you know that this is going to be the punishment, or not no extension cords and with switches like when I was growing up. But, I believe the reason why the kids today are so disrespectful and not respecting the elders and everything in this generation of kids is because they don't get whippings, and because they are taught now to sit there and talk to your child and put them down for timeout and tell them not to do this and not to do that. The training starts when they're young, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time they get in school, your child should be able to obey the teacher, obey any adult they come in contact with.
And you feel like the wooden spoon is the only way to achieve that?
I believe that they need a spanking.
Okay.
I believe all kids should have gotten a spanking at some point in their life where, okay, I better not do that no more.
Okay. What do you say to that, Dr. Jarret?
Well, that's one that we're going to definitely have to agree to disagree, because there are other strategies that you can use that can be equally as effective and even more effective without the repercussions or the bad effects of what happens with that physical violence, because it's that physical violence that is instilled in a child in a young age. They think and grow up to learn that physical violence is acceptable in any place at any time, even with people they love.
Dr. Patton, you said, so Summer has a 15-year-old, and you have a couple of chapters, tweens and teens and young adults. Say, for example, if Summer's 15-year-old is kind of getting off path, what tools would you give her instead of slapping them in the face?
So a lot of it really revolves around responsibility. They need to learn that they are responsible. There are going to be consequences for things that don't go right. It doesn't have to be a wooden spoon. It can actually be other things that they really they pride themselves in. I mean, cell phones and electronics are one of those things that kids thrive on these days. And nobody says that a kid needs to have a cell phone or play video games or any of that. And if they can't follow the rules, then you just take away privileges until their only responsibility just is going to school and coming home. That's it.
I like what you said about the violence and breaking the pattern, because sometimes kids feel like all she gonna do is hit me or take the roll of the dice and decide maybe today she tired and not being consistent.
Yeah, and they say, man, it won't hurt. It doesn't hurt that bad, and I'm gonna keep acting the way I want to act.
Yeah, you gotta. Well, Summer, everybody. The doctor has said that everybody parents differently.
Yeah.
And maybe it's worth, trying a different way, a different method to discipline your kids. But at 15, that wooden spoon ain't gonna work on your son, and you got to figure out another way, at some point to get to those kids. But I wish you the best, Summer. I think you should get his book. Summer, you still there? Oh, shit, summer. Yeah, okay, summer.
Thank you.
So I guess summer's over. Yeah. Hey, all right. Look, we got a lot of people on the line. Josh from Kansas City, Philip from California, Anthony in Cali, Justin in Virginia, Mia in Pittsburgh, Chevy in Florida, Terrence in Maryland. Trust me, if you're on social, hit this man directly. He's going to respond to anybody that says they heard him on Sway in the Morning. So hit him directly at
Dr. Jarret. Spell out the word doctor, Jarret.
Thank you, Dr. Jarret. Kelly Kinkaid.
You can follow me on social, Kelly Kinkaid, KELLYKINKAID. And I just wanted to also say you also have another book, License to Live. All of your books, they can find them on?
They can find them on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your finer book retailers. They are out there.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
you, man.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Count, boy.